My name is Patricia Coleman, and I'm 52 years old. For the past 24 years, I've been both mother and father to my son Michael. His biological father walked out when Michael was 2, leaving me with nothing but a mountain of debt and a toddler who cried every night asking where Daddy went. I worked 3 jobs to put Michael through school. I cleaned offices at night, waited tables during lunch shifts, and sold cosmetics on weekends. My hands were always cracked from the cleaning chemicals, and I smelled like industrial disinfectant more often than perfume. But I didn't care. Every sacrifice was worth it if it meant Michael could have the life I never had. When Michael got accepted to Northwestern University, I cried tears of joy in my beat-up Honda Civic in the parking lot of the diner where I worked. My baby was going to be the first person in our family to graduate from college. I had saved every penny I could for his education, working 60-hour weeks for years. The rest we covered with student loans that I co-signed, putting my own financial future on the line. Michael studied business administration and did well. I was so proud watching him grow into a confident young man. He joined a fraternity, made friends with classmates whose parents were doctors and lawyers, and started dating a girl named Madison, whose father owned a chain of luxury car dealerships across Illinois. Madison Pierce was everything I wasn't. She was tall and blonde, with perfectly straight teeth and clothes that cost more than I made in a month. Her nails were always manicured, her hair always styled, and she spoke with the kind of refined accent that comes from private schools and country clubs. I tried my best to like her, but something about the way she looked at me always made me feel small. The first time I met Madison was at a parents' weekend event during Michael's junior year. I had saved for months to buy a new outfit from Macy's, something I hoped would help me fit in with the other parents. But when Madison's parents showed up in their Mercedes and Rolex watches, I realized my JCPenney blazer and Target shoes weren't fooling anyone. Madison was polite enough in front of Michael, but I caught the way she whispered to her sorority sisters when she thought I wasn't looking. I saw how she steered conversations away from topics where I might contribute, like work or budgeting or any of the real-world experiences that had shaped my life. When I mentioned that I had worked as a waitress to help pay for Michael's education, she gave me a pitying smile and changed the subject to their upcoming spring break trip to Cabo San Lucas. Michael started changing. After he got serious with Madison, he stopped calling me as often. When he did call, our conversations felt stilted and awkward. He started correcting the way I pronounced certain words and suggesting I might want to update my wardrobe when I visited campus. Once, when I brought homemade cookies to his dorm room, he seemed embarrassed and quickly ushered me out when his fraternity brothers approached. "Mom, you're embarrassing," he said once when I hugged him goodbye in front of his fraternity house. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I swallowed my hurt and told myself he was just young and trying to impress his friends. I convinced myself that this was just a phase, that my sweet boy was still in there somewhere. The changes became more pronounced as graduation approached. Michael started avoiding bringing Madison around when I visited. He made excuses for why I couldn't meet his friends. When I suggested taking him and Madison out to dinner, he claimed they were too busy with school and social obligations. And when I asked about his post-graduation plans, he became evasive and distant, giving me vague answers about opportunities and networking. But I kept supporting him. I kept making the monthly loan payments, even when it meant eating ramen noodles for dinner and wearing the same 3 work outfits on rotation. I kept sending care packages filled with his favorite snacks and practical items like laundry detergent and printer paper. I told everyone at work how proud I was of my college boy, showing photos of him in his Northwestern sweatshirt to anyone who would listen. Because that's what mothers do. We love our children unconditionally, even when they're breaking our hearts one dismissive conversation at a time. 2 weeks before graduation, I called Michael to finalize plans for the ceremony and celebration. I had requested 3 days off work, the first vacation time I'd taken in over 2 years. I had booked a modest hotel room in Evanston, carefully budgeting for the expense. I had bought a new dress from TJ Maxx, something navy blue and conservative that I hoped would help me blend in with the other parents. I was so excited to watch my son walk across that stage and receive his diploma, the culmination of everything we had both worked toward. "Mom, we need to talk," Michael said, his voice tight with discomfort. "Of course, sweetheart. What's on your mind?" There was a long pause. I could hear music and laughter in the background. He was probably at some end-of-semester party with his friends. "It's about graduation. The ceremony is fine. You can come to that. But the party afterward, I think it's better if you don't attend." I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. The phone felt heavy in my hand. "What do you mean?" "Look, it's going to be mostly my fraternity brothers and their families, plus Madison's family and friends. You're not going to fit in, Mom. And Madison's parents are hosting it at their country club. It's a really upscale place, and I just think you'd be more comfortable staying home." The words hung in the air between us. My son, the child I had sacrificed everything for, was telling me I wasn't good enough to celebrate his achievements with him. The child I had rocked to sleep when he had nightmares, who I had cheered for at every school play and soccer game, who I had held when he cried about bullies or failed tests. That child was now telling me I was an embarrassment. "Michael, I've been looking forward to this for months. I've worked extra shifts to afford the trip. I've told everyone at work about your graduation party. Mrs. Henderson from the diner is covering my Saturday shift so I can be there. I'm sorry, Mom, but my mind is made up. Madison thinks it's for the best too. She says her parents' friends are very particular about the kind of people they associate with Madison. Of course, this was her idea. She'd probably been poisoning my son against me for months, filling his head with ideas about how I wasn't sophisticated enough for their social circle. I could picture her whispering in his ear about my rough hands and discount store clothes, convincing him that I would somehow taint his special day. "So you're choosing your girlfriend over your mother. The woman who raised you, who worked 3 jobs to pay for your education." "It's not about choosing anyone. It's about being practical. You wouldn't enjoy yourself anyway. These people talk about things like wine investments and vacation homes in the Hamptons. They discuss art galleries and charity galas. You'd just feel out of place." I felt tears stinging my eyes, but I refused to let him hear me cry. I had spent too many years being strong for him to break down now. "I see. And what about everything I've done for you, Michael? The years I worked myself to the bone so you could have this education. The nights I fell asleep at the kitchen table doing your homework with you. The times I went without so you could have new clothes and school supplies. Doesn't that earn me the right to celebrate with you? Mom, don't be dramatic. You can take me out to dinner the next day or something. We'll have our own celebration, just the 2 of us. Maybe somewhere nice, like Olive Garden." Olive Garden. He thought taking me to Olive Garden would make up for excluding me from the biggest moment of his academic life. The casual dismissal in his voice made my heart ache. "That's not the same thing, and you know it. Look, I have to go. Madison and I are meeting her parents for dinner at some French place downtown. We can talk about this later, but my mind is made up. I'm sorry, Mom, but this is how it has to be." The line went dead. I sat in my empty apartment, staring at the phone in my hand, feeling more alone than I had since my ex-husband walked out all those years ago. The child I had devoted my entire adult life to raising had just told me I wasn't worthy of standing beside him at his moment of triumph. I tried calling back several times over the next few days, but Michael either didn't answer or gave me brief, dismissive conversations that made it clear his decision was final. When I suggested compromises, maybe I could just stop by for an hour, or attend a separate celebration, or even just meet his friends briefly, he shut down every option with increasing irritation. "Madison's family is paying for everything, so they get to decide the guest list," he said during our last conversation before graduation. "I'm sorry, Mom, but that's just how it is. You'll understand when you're older. When I'm older." As if my 52 years of life experience, including 24 years of single parenthood, had taught me nothing about dignity and respect. That's when something inside me snapped. I hung up the phone and sat in my small living room. Looking around at the apartment I had called home for 15 years because I couldn't afford anything better. The furniture was secondhand, the carpet was worn thin in places, and the kitchen appliances were older than Michael's college career. But it was clean and comfortable, and it was ours, or it had been ours. Back when Michael still considered me part of his life, I thought about all the sacrifices I had made. The social life I had given up because I was either working or too tired to go out. The relationships I had avoided because I didn't want to subject any man to the financial strain of dating a single mother. The dreams I had deferred because every spare dollar went toward Michael's future. I had spent 24 years putting Michael first. I had denied myself vacations, new cars, nice clothes, and even dating opportunities, because every dollar and every free moment went to securing his future. I had a small inheritance from my grandmother, about $50,000, that I had been planning to give to Michael as a graduation gift to help him start his adult life debt-free. But more importantly, I had a life insurance policy worth $450,000 that named Michael as the sole beneficiary. It was everything I had left to give him. The final gift from a mother who had always put her child's needs before her own. Combined with my grandmother's inheritance, it represented $500,000 that would set Michael up for a comfortable start in life. The morning of Michael's graduation, I woke up in my hotel room with a new sense of clarity. I had attended the ceremony the day before, sitting in the audience as parents around me took photos with expensive cameras and made plans for celebration dinners at upscale restaurants. I watched my son walk across that stage in his cap and gown, and I felt a complex mix of pride and heartbreak. Michael had spotted me in the crowd and given a small wave, but immediately turned his attention to Madison and her family, who were sitting in a different section with better seats that they had paid extra for. The Pierce family had matching Northwestern t-shirts and professional photographers capturing every moment. After the ceremony, Michael came over to take a quick photo with me. He seemed rushed and distracted, constantly looking over at Madison's family. "Thanks for coming, Mom," he said, giving me a brief, obligatory hug. "I'll call you next week when things settle down. What about dinner tonight? I thought we could celebrate, just the two of us." "I can't. Madison's parents made reservations at some fancy steakhouse downtown. It's a family thing." He paused, seeming to realize how that sounded. "You know, family and important people." And that was it. 24 years of sacrifice and dedication. Dismissed with a casual thanks for coming and a promise of a phone call that I wasn't even sure would materialize. I watched him walk away to rejoin Madison's family, his new family, the family that was sophisticated enough to deserve his time and attention. That night, while Michael was probably toasting his bright future at some expensive restaurant, I sat in my hotel room and made some phone calls. First, I called my insurance company. "Hi, this is Patricia Coleman. I need to change the beneficiary on my life insurance policy." The representative was professional and efficient. "Of course, Ms. Coleman. What changes would you like to make?" "I want to remove my son Michael Coleman as the beneficiary and instead name Northwestern University as the beneficiary for the purpose of establishing a scholarship fund. I can certainly help you with that. You'll need to provide some documentation, but we can process the change. May I ask the amount of the policy?" $450,000. There was a pause. "That's quite a substantial donation, Ms. Coleman. Are you certain about this change?" "I've never been more certain of anything in my life." Next, I called my bank to arrange for the immediate transfer of my grandmother's inheritance to Northwestern University. Then I called the Northwestern University Financial Aid Office. "Hi, this is Patricia Coleman," I said to the Student Services representative. "I'd like to make a donation to establish a scholarship fund for single mothers attending Northwestern." The woman on the phone was delighted to help. Her enthusiasm was infectious as we discussed the details. I would donate $50,000 immediately to establish the Patricia Coleman Scholarship for Single Mothers, and an additional $450,000 would be transferred to the fund upon my death through my life insurance policy. The scholarship would provide full tuition assistance to single mothers pursuing undergraduate degrees at Northwestern, with preference given to first-generation college students from working-class backgrounds. It would help women like me, women who had been told they weren't good enough, smart enough, or sophisticated enough to belong in elite academic spaces. "This is such a generous gift," the representative said. "Your scholarship will change lives for generations to come. Would you like the scholarship recipient to be announced at any particular time?" I smiled, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in weeks. "Yes, actually. Could you announce it today? I believe there's a graduation party happening at the Oakwood Country Club this afternoon. My son Michael Coleman is one of the guests. I'd love for the announcement to be made while he's there." Oh, what a lovely surprise that will be for him. I'm sure he'll be so proud of his mother's generosity. If only she knew. After I finished the paperwork, which took several hours and required multiple calls to my bank, insurance company, and lawyers, I drove to the country club. I didn't go inside. I wasn't invited, after all. But I parked across the street where I could see the elegant venue with its manicured lawns, perfectly trimmed hedges, and luxury cars in the parking lot. There were BMWs, Mercedes, and at least 3 Porsches that I could see. Through the tall windows, I could see well-dressed people mingling on the terrace, champagne glasses glinting in the afternoon sun. The men were in expensive suits, and the women wore designer dresses that probably cost more than my monthly rent. It was exactly the kind of sophisticated gathering where I supposedly wouldn't fit in. At exactly 3 p.m., Northwestern University sent out the press release announcing the establishment of the Patricia Coleman Scholarship for single mothers. The news went out through social media, the university website, and directly to alumni who might be interested in making similar donations. I watched as several people at the party started checking their phones. I could see the news of the scholarship announcement spreading through the gathering like ripples in a pond. People were showing their phones to others, pointing and talking in animated clusters. Then I saw Michael. He was standing on the terrace in his dark graduation suit, looking handsome and successful next to Madison in her perfect pink dress. Someone, I think it was Madison's father, approached them with his phone out, a big smile on his face. I could see them reading something on the screen. Michael's expression changed from confusion to shock to something that looked like panic. He immediately pulled out his own phone, probably checking his messages or the university website to confirm what he was seeing. Within minutes, my phone was ringing. It was Michael. "Mom, what the hell did you do?" "Hello, Michael. How's the party? Are you having a lovely time with Madison's family and all their sophisticated friends? Don't play dumb with me. I just got about 20 phone calls and text messages telling me that you donated $500,000 to Northwestern. Is this some kind of joke?" "No joke. I established a scholarship fund for single mothers. The Patricia Coleman Scholarship will help women who might otherwise be told they don't belong at prestigious universities. Women who might be considered too embarrassing to stand next to their own children at graduation parties. You've lost your goddamn mind. That money was supposed to be my inheritance. You promised me that money." I could hear Madison's voice in the background, shrill and agitated. She was saying something about how this would affect their wedding plans and down payment on a house. "Actually, Michael, I never promised you anything. That was my money. Money I earned working jobs that apparently embarrassed you. Money I saved by living in the same tiny apartment for 15 years because I was too busy paying for your education to afford anything better for myself. Mom, you can't be serious about this. Call them back and cancel it. Tell them it was a mistake, that you were having some kind of breakdown or something." "Oh, but I am serious. Dead serious. You wanted me to understand that I don't fit into your new world. And you know what? You're absolutely right. I don't fit into a world where a son can discard his mother like an old, embarrassing piece of furniture. This is insane. That money could have helped me buy a house, start a business, pay off my student loans that I co-signed, by the way, loans that I'll still be responsible for even though you've made it clear that I'm no longer welcome in your life. But don't worry, I'm sure Madison's father can help you out. He seems to have plenty of money to throw around. I could hear him trying to control his breathing, probably aware that the other party guests were watching his increasingly animated phone conversation. Look, I'm sorry about the party thing, okay? Maybe I made a mistake, but you can't just give away my inheritance because you're pissed off about one stupid party. One stupid party. Michael, this isn't about a party. This is about respect. This is about 24 years of love and sacrifice being dismissed because I'm not polished enough for your girlfriend's social circle. Madison's voice got louder in the background. I could make out enough to understand that she was telling Michael to handle this and asking if I could be committed or something. When Michael came back on the line, his voice was cold and controlled. Fine. You want to play games. Two can play that game. Don't expect to hear from me again. You've made your choice, and I'm making mine. No, Michael, you made the choice when you decided I wasn't good enough to celebrate the achievements I made possible. I'm just living with the consequences of your decision. You're going to regret this. When you're old and alone and need someone to take care of you, remember this moment. Remember that you chose spite over family. And when you're struggling with student loan payments and can't afford the lifestyle Madison is accustomed to, you can remember this moment too. Remember that you chose social status over the woman who gave you everything. I hung up and sat in my car, watching as the party continued inside the country club. Through the windows, I could see Michael pacing back and forth on the terrace, his phone pressed to his ear as he made what were probably frantic calls to lawyers or financial advisors, trying to figure out if there was any way to reverse what I had done. Madison was standing nearby, her arms crossed and her expression stormy. She kept gesturing emphatically, clearly agitated about this turn of events. The other party guests were giving them a wide berth, probably sensing the family drama unfolding. I started my car and drove back to my hotel. That evening, I had dinner alone at a small Italian restaurant near campus. The same place where I used to take Michael for birthday dinners when he was younger and still thought I hung the moon. The food was simple and affordable, nothing like the fancy steakhouse where Michael was probably dining with his new family. But for the first time in months, I enjoyed my meal. There was something liberating about eating alone, not having to worry about whether I was embarrassing anyone or whether my table manners were sophisticated enough. The next morning, as I packed my bags to return to Chicago and my regular life, I received a text message from an unknown number. It was from a woman named Sarah Martinez, a single mother of two who was starting her freshman year at Northwestern in the fall. Ms. Coleman, I just heard about your scholarship fund on the Northwestern Facebook page. I wanted to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I've been working 2 jobs and wasn't sure how I was going to afford tuition even with financial aid. Your gift means my children will see their mother graduate from college. You've changed our lives. Thank you for believing that people like us belong here. I cried reading that message. Not tears of sadness or regret, but tears of purpose and validation. For the first time in months, I felt like I had done something that mattered. Something that would outlast the pain of my son's rejection. Over the next few weeks, I received dozens of similar messages. Single mothers, first-generation college students, women who had been told they weren't smart enough or worthy enough to pursue higher education. The scholarship fund had created a ripple effect, inspiring other alumni to donate to similar causes and bringing attention to the challenges faced by non-traditional students. The Chicago Tribune ran a story about the scholarship, calling it a mother's love transformed into educational opportunity. The article quoted several scholarship recipients and highlighted the growing need for support for non-traditional students at elite universities. Michael didn't call, he didn't text, he didn't send angry emails or try to contact me through mutual acquaintances. It was as if I had died to him the moment I chose to invest in other people's children, instead of his comfort and privilege. But the silence from my son was filled with voices from the women whose lives I had changed. Sarah Martinez sent me photos of her first day of classes, beaming with pride as she stood in front of the Northwestern campus. Maria Santos, a 40-year-old mother of 3, wrote to tell me about her engineering classes and her dream of designing affordable housing for low-income families. 3 months after graduation, I ran into Michael's fraternity brother Jake at the Jewelosco where I did my grocery shopping. Jake had always been polite to me during my visits to campus, and he seemed genuinely uncomfortable when he recognized me in the cereal aisle. "Mrs. Coleman, how are you doing?" "I'm doing well, Jake. How are you settling into post-graduation life?" "It's been good. I got a job at a marketing firm downtown." He hesitated, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "Listen, I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I wanted you to know that not everyone agreed with what happened at the graduation party. Some of us thought it was really messed up that you weren't invited." "That's kind of you to say. And the scholarship thing, that was amazing. My girlfriend's little sister is applying for it next year. She's been raised by her grandmother after her mom died, and she never thought college was possible. I hope she gets it. The selection committee is looking for young women who have overcome significant obstacles." Jake looked around nervously, then seemed to decide to speak his mind. "Michael's been pretty bitter about the whole thing. He and Madison got engaged last month, and he's been telling people that that you lost it, and basically stole his inheritance out of spite. And what do you think? Honestly, I think you invested in something that will matter long after all of us are gone. Michael will figure out how to pay off his loans and buy a house eventually. Madison's dad already offered him a job at one of his dealerships. But those scholarships are going to change lives for generations." "Thank you, Jake. That means more to me than you know." As I drove home from the grocery store, I thought about the choices that had brought me to this point. Had I been too harsh? Had I let my hurt feelings drive me to a decision I would regret? There were moments, usually late at night when the apartment felt too quiet, when I wondered if I should have been the bigger person. If I should have swallowed my pride and accepted Michael's terms for our relationship. But then I thought about Sarah Martinez and Maria Santos and the dozens of other women who would benefit from the scholarship fund. I thought about the single mothers who would walk across graduation stages in years to come, supported by a program that said they belonged in academic spaces, regardless of their background or bank account. I thought about the message I had sent to my son, that love and respect cannot be taken for granted. That family relationships require mutual consideration and kindness, and that actions have consequences even when they come from people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. The holidays came and went without any contact from Michael. Christmas was the hardest. I had always loved buying him presents and watching his face light up on Christmas morning. Instead, I volunteered at a local shelter, serving Christmas dinner to families who reminded me of myself when Michael was young. On New Year's Eve, I received a card from one of my scholarship recipients. Inside was a photo of her family celebrating her acceptance to medical school. "Because of your gift," she wrote, "I'm going to be Dr. Rodriguez someday. My children will grow up knowing that their mother is a doctor, and they'll never doubt that they belong anywhere they want to be." 6 months after graduation, I received a wedding invitation in the mail. Michael and Madison were getting married at the same country club where I had been deemed unfit for a graduation party. The invitation was addressed to me alone, with no option for a +1. Even now, I was being told I could attend their celebration only on their terms, only as much as they deemed appropriate. The invitation was expensive, heavy cardstock with gold embossing. At the bottom, in small print, it specified black tie required, another barrier designed to remind me that I didn't belong in their world. A black tie dress would cost more than I spent on clothing in 6 months. IRSVPED that I would not be attending. Michael called me the day after. He must have received my response card. "Mom, you have to come to my wedding. People are asking questions about why my own mother isn't going to be there, are they? How embarrassing for you. Don't be like this. I know we had some problems, but this is my wedding. You're supposed to be there." According to who? The same social rules that said I was supposed to be at your graduation party. That was different. How was it different? Michael, you didn't want me at your graduation party because I would embarrass you in front of Madison's family. Now you want me at your wedding so you don't have to explain my absence to those same people. You want me there as a prop, not as your mother. I want you there because you're my mom. No, You want me there because my absence makes you look bad. There's a difference. He was quiet for a long moment. In the background, I could hear Madison asking him something, her voice sharp with impatience. What do you want from me, Mom? What can I do to fix this? Nothing, Michael. You can't fix 24 years of love and sacrifice with one phone call. You can't undo telling me I was too embarrassing to celebrate with you. You can't take back choosing your girlfriend's comfort over your mother's feelings. I was stupid, okay? I made a mistake, but you can't punish me forever. I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself. I won't put myself in a position to be hurt by you again. So that's it. You're just going to cut me out of your life. You cut me out of your life first, remember. I'm just accepting the terms you set. The line went quiet, except for muffled voices, Michael and Madison having what sounded like a heated discussion. When Michael came back on the line, his voice was cold again. Fine, if that's how you want it to be, that's how it'll be. But don't come crawling back when you realize you've lost your only child over your stupid pride. Goodbye, Michael. I hung up and never heard from him again. That same week, I received a letter from Northwestern University. The scholarship fund had grown beyond my initial donation, with matching contributions from other alumni and corporate sponsors. They were renaming it the Patricia Coleman Center for First-Generation Students, and they wanted to invite me to speak at the annual scholarship reception. Your story has inspired others, the letter said. We've received dozens of additional donations from single parents and first-generation college graduates who want to support students like themselves. Your initial gift has multiplied into something extraordinary. The scholarship reception was held in a beautiful ballroom on Northwestern's campus. I wore the same navy dress I had bought for Michael's graduation. But this time, I felt appropriate and welcomed instead of out of place. Standing at that podium, looking out at an audience of young women who reminded me of myself 30 years ago, I felt something I hadn't experienced in a very long time: pride. Not pride in my son's achievements, which I had been borrowing for so many years, but pride in my own choices and my own legacy. I want to tell you about a conversation I had with my son, I began, and I told them the whole story. I talked about sacrifice and disappointment, about loving someone enough to let them face the consequences of their choices, and about finding the courage to invest in strangers who might prove more worthy of your faith than the people you raised. The room was completely silent as I spoke. When I finished, the applause was thunderous and sustained. Several young women approached me afterward with tears in their eyes, thanking me for showing them that their dreams were valid and achievable. One woman, about my age, came up to me after the reception. I'm Dr. Linda Washington, she said. I'm a professor here now, but I was a single mother when I started college 30 years ago. There were no scholarships like yours then. I worked nights cleaning the same buildings where I attended classes during the day. Your scholarship recipients don't know how lucky they are. I think they do know, I said. That's what makes them worthy of it. 1 year after Michael's graduation, I still hadn't heard from him. I didn't know if he and Madison were happy in their marriage. I didn't know if he was enjoying his job at Madison's father's car dealership or if he was struggling with his student loan payments. I didn't know if he ever thought about me or regretted the way our relationship had ended. But I did know that 12 single mothers were attending Northwestern University that year because of the scholarship fund. I knew that Sarah Martinez had made the dean's list her first semester and was tutoring other students in mathematics. I knew that Maria Santos was excelling in her engineering courses and had been accepted into an exclusive internship program. I knew that I slept better at night, knowing my money was changing lives instead of simply making one privileged young man's path a little easier. The scholarship recipients had formed their own support group, meeting monthly to study together and share their experiences. They called themselves Patricia's Daughters, which made me cry the first time I heard it. These young women had given me something I thought I had lost forever. Children who appreciated my sacrifices and understood the value of the opportunities they had been given. Sometimes I wondered if I would ever hear from Michael again. Maybe when he had children of his own. He would understand what it felt like to love someone so completely that you would give them everything you had. Maybe he would realize that the woman he found so embarrassing was the same woman who worked 3 jobs to pay for the education that opened all those doors for him. Or maybe he wouldn't. Maybe he would continue living his life without me, telling people that his mother went crazy and stole his inheritance. Maybe Madison would continue to be grateful that the embarrassing mother-in-law was out of the picture. But I had made my peace with that possibility. I spent 24 years defining myself as Michael's mother, measuring my worth by his achievements and his happiness. Now, I was learning to be Patricia Coleman, a woman who worked hard, loved deeply, and chose to invest in the future, even when it meant walking away from the past. The scholarship recipients sent me updates regularly. They shared their struggles and victories, their career goals and family milestones. They had become the children I never had but always deserved, young people who appreciated sacrifice and understood the value of the opportunities they had been given. Sarah Martinez graduated summa cum laude 2 years later and was accepted to graduate school in social work. She sent me a photo of herself at her graduation ceremony, wearing a cap and gown and surrounded by her children and extended family. Her smile was radiant with pride and accomplishment. In the background of the photo, I could see other scholarship recipients who had attended her ceremony to show support. These young women had formed a community, supporting each other through the challenges of balancing school, work, and family responsibilities. Looking at that photo, I felt something I never felt during Michael's graduation. I felt like I belonged. Not because I had been formally invited or because I met someone else's standards of sophistication, but because I had earned my place in these women's stories through generosity and faith in their potential. That's the inheritance I chose to leave, not a bank account that would be spent and forgotten, but a legacy of opportunity that would continue long after I was gone. Every woman who received the Patricia Coleman Scholarship would carry forward the message that single mothers belonged in every space, that working-class backgrounds were something to be proud of, and that love should never require you to make yourself smaller to fit someone else's idea of acceptability. Michael made his choice that day when he told me I wasn't sophisticated enough for his new world. He chose Madison's approval over his mother's feelings, social status over family loyalty, and temporary comfort over lasting relationships. I made my choice too. I chose to invest in women who would appreciate the gift, to support dreams that had been dismissed by others, and to create something meaningful from the ashes of my broken relationship with my son. Some people might say I was vindictive or petty. They might argue that I should have been the bigger person, that I should have swallowed my hurt and continued to support Michael regardless of how he treated me. But I think there's something to be said for teaching people that their actions have consequences, even when those people are your own children. Especially when those people are your own children. Love doesn't mean accepting disrespect. Unconditional love doesn't mean unconditional enabling. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step back and let someone discover what they've lost. As I write this, it's been exactly 3 years since Michael's graduation party. The scholarship fund has helped 36 women pursue their education at Northwestern. 8 of them have already graduated and are working in their chosen fields. 12 more will graduate next year. I still live in the same small apartment, still work at the same jobs, still drive the same beat-up Honda, but I'm not the same woman who was told she was too embarrassing to attend her son's celebration. I'm a woman who knows her worth, who has found her purpose, and who has learned that sometimes the greatest act of love is knowing when to let go. The Patricia Coleman Center for First-Generation Students hosted its 3rd annual gala last month. I delivered the keynote address to an audience of successful women who had overcome the same obstacles I faced. The theme of the evening was From Heartbreak to Hope, and I shared the story of how rejection became redirection, how a mother's love found its way to the children who truly needed it. During the reception afterward, I was approached by a young woman I didn't recognize. She was elegantly dressed, confident, and professional-looking. "Ms. Coleman," she said, "I'm Dr. Jennifer Chen. I graduated from Northwestern 5 years ago." I smiled politely, assuming she was another alumna who had heard about the scholarship fund. I wanted to thank you, she continued. Not for the scholarship, I wasn't a recipient, but for the example you set. My mother worked as a seamstress in Chinatown to put me through school. When I graduated medical school, my fiancé's family made it clear that they thought she was beneath them. They suggested she shouldn't attend our wedding because she didn't speak perfect English and might embarrass us. My heart stopped. This story sounded painfully familiar. I was actually considering going along with it, Dr. Chen continued. I was so focused on fitting into my new life that I almost forgot who made it possible. But then I read about your story in the Tribune. I realized that if I was ashamed of my mother, I was ashamed of myself. I broke off the engagement. Oh my. Best decision I ever made. I married someone who loves and respects my mother as much as I do. She walked me down the aisle because my father had passed away, and she gave the most beautiful toast about sacrifice and unconditional love. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. I felt tears welling up in my own eyes. Your story taught me that love isn't about making people comfortable with rejecting you. It's about setting boundaries and demanding the respect you deserve. Thank you for showing me that. Stories like Dr. Chen's had become common over the years. The newspaper article about my scholarship had resonated with people across the country who had faced similar situations with their children or families. I received letters from parents who had been excluded from weddings, graduations, and family celebrations because they weren't considered sophisticated enough. Some had chosen to fight for their place at these events. Others had chosen to step back, as I had. But all of them had found strength in knowing they weren't alone in their experiences. The scholarship program had evolved beyond my initial vision. In addition to providing financial support, it now offered mentorship programs, career counseling, and networking opportunities. The scholarship recipients supported each other through study groups, childcare cooperatives, and professional development workshops. Patricia's daughters had grown into a formal organization with chapters at universities across the Midwest. They advocated for better support services for non-traditional students and raised funds for additional scholarships at other schools. Maria Santos, the engineering student I had followed since the beginning, had graduated and was now working for a firm that designed affordable housing. She had gotten married to a man she met in graduate school, and they were expecting their first child together. I want to name her Patricia, Maria had written in her last letter. Not after you specifically, but after the idea you represent. That a woman can be strong enough to choose her own worth over other people's comfort. I had cried reading that letter. To know that my name would be carried by a child who would grow up understanding that love and respect were inseparable. It felt like the greatest honor I could imagine. Sarah Martinez had finished her master's degree in social work and was now running a program for single mothers transitioning back to education. She often spoke at scholarship events, telling her story and encouraging other women to pursue their dreams regardless of their circumstances. Ms. Coleman saved my life, she would say, not just financially, but emotionally. She showed me that being a single mother wasn't something to apologize for. It was something to be proud of. For years after that terrible phone call with Michael, I finally heard news about him through an unexpected source. I was at the grocery store when I ran into my old neighbor Mrs. Patterson, who had known Michael since he was a little boy. Patricia, she called out as I was loading groceries into my car. How are you, dear? I haven't seen you in ages. I'm doing well, Mrs. Patterson. How are you? Oh, you know, same old, same old. But I have to ask, how is Michael doing? I heard through the grapevine that he and his wife are having some troubles. My heart skipped a beat. Troubles. Well, I don't like to gossip, but my daughter works at the bank where his wife's father does business. Apparently, the car dealership business isn't doing so well. They had to close 2 locations, and there's talk of bankruptcy. Michael lost his job there, and they had to move out of that fancy house they bought. I tried to keep my expression neutral, but my mind was racing. I see. And apparently, his wife, Madison, is it? She's not handling the financial stress well. My daughter said she heard they're talking about divorce. Something about Madison saying she didn't sign up for a middle-class lifestyle. The irony was almost overwhelming. Madison, who had found me too lower class for her social circle, was now facing the possibility of becoming middle class herself. That's unfortunate, I said carefully. Oh, and Patricia, I hope this doesn't hurt your feelings, but my daughter said Michael was telling people that his mother had left him some money, but she spent it all on charity instead. He seemed pretty bitter about it. I'm sure he did. Mrs. Patterson looked at me with concern. Are you two still not speaking? It seems like such a shame. You were such a devoted mother. Sometimes being a devoted mother means knowing when to step back. Mrs. Patterson. That night, I found myself thinking about Michael for the first time in months. Was he struggling? Was he scared? Part of me, the part that had loved him unconditionally for 24 years, wanted to reach out, to offer comfort and support. But the larger part of me, the part that had learned self-respect and boundaries, knew better. If Michael was facing difficulties, it was an opportunity for him to learn and grow. It was a chance for him to understand what it meant to struggle, to appreciate help when it was offered, and to treat people with kindness regardless of their circumstances. I had given him the tools he needed to succeed, a good education, strong values, and the example of hard work and perseverance. If he chose not to use those tools, if he had become too dependent on Madison's family wealth and too dismissive of people he considered beneath him, then these struggles might teach him lessons that my unconditional support never could. 5 years after the graduation party that changed everything, I received an unexpected phone call. I was at work, cleaning offices in the Loop, when my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. Hello, Mom. My heart stopped. It was Michael's voice, but he sounded different, older, tired. Hello, Michael. There was a long pause. I could hear traffic in the background, as if he was calling from a car or walking down a street. I wanted to call and tell you something. I waited. Madison and I are getting divorced. It's been final for about 6 months now. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you really? I never wanted you to be unhappy, Michael. I just wanted you to treat me with respect. Another long pause. I know I messed up, Mom. I know I hurt you. I've been thinking about it a lot lately, especially since, he trailed off. Since what? Since I've been struggling. Since I lost my job and had to move back into an apartment. Since Madison left me the moment things got tough. Since I realized that all those sophisticated friends of hers disappeared when I couldn't afford to keep up with their lifestyle anymore, I felt a mix of sadness and vindication. I was sorry that my son was hurting, but I couldn't deny a certain satisfaction in knowing that he was learning the lessons I had tried to teach him through example. I'm sorry you're going through a difficult time. The thing is, he continued, his voice cracking slightly, I kept thinking about what you said. About how you worked 3 jobs to put me through school. About how you sacrificed everything for me. And I realized, I never appreciated any of it. I took it all for granted. Yes, you did. I was embarrassed by you. By your job, your apartment, your clothes. I thought I was better than all of that. But now I'm living in a studio apartment in Rogers Park, working at a call center, and eating ramen noodles for dinner. And you know what I realized? What's that? I realized that you did all of that for me. You lived that way so I wouldn't have to. And instead of being grateful, I was ashamed. I was ashamed of the woman who loved me enough to sacrifice her own comfort for mine. I felt tears starting to form. This was what I had wanted to hear for years, but now that I was hearing it, it felt bittersweet. I also realized something else, Michael continued. I realized that you were never the problem. You were never embarrassing. You were real. You were authentic. Madison and her family, all those people at the country club, they're all fake. They only care about appearances and money and status. But you cared about things that actually mattered. Michael, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. I know I hurt you in a way that can't be undone. But I wanted you to know that I understand now. I understand what I lost when I chose them over you. I was crying now, standing in an empty office building at midnight, talking to the son I thought I had lost forever. What do you want from me, Michael? Nothing. I don't want anything. I don't expect you to take me back, or forgive me, or help me out of this mess I've made. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand. I understand that you were the best thing in my life, and I threw it away because I was too stupid and selfish to see it." We were both quiet for a long moment. "I heard about the scholarship fund," he said finally. "I looked it up online, read some of the stories from the women you've helped. I'm proud of you, Mom. I'm proud that my mother is the kind of person who turns her pain into something beautiful. Thank you. I saw that they named a building after you. The Patricia Coleman Center. That's amazing." "It is pretty amazing," I agreed. "I know this doesn't fix anything," Michael said. "I know I can't undo the hurt I caused you. But I wanted you to know that I love you. I've always loved you. I was just too immature and selfish to show it properly. I love you too, Michael. I never stopped loving you. I know. And I'm sorry it took me losing everything to realize how much that love was worth." After we hung up, I sat in that empty office for a long time, thinking about forgiveness and second chances and the complicated nature of family love. Michael didn't ask me for money. He didn't ask me to help him get back on his feet. He didn't even ask me to resume our relationship. He had simply called to acknowledge what he had done and to express his understanding of what he had lost. It was more than I had ever expected to receive from him. Over the following months, Michael and I began to rebuild our relationship slowly. He would call every few weeks, updating me on his life and asking about mine. He seemed genuinely interested in the scholarship program and the women it was helping. He got a better job at a nonprofit organization that helped veterans find housing. The work was meaningful, but didn't pay particularly well. He lived modestly, in a small apartment with second-hand furniture and a beat-up car that reminded me of the one I had driven when he was young. "I understand now why you kept that old Honda for so long," he said during one of our phone calls. "When you're paying for someone else's education, every dollar matters." He was still paying off his student loans, the ones I had co-signed years earlier. But he never asked me to help with the payments or complained about the financial burden. He seemed to understand that this was his responsibility, a consequence of choices he had made. 6 months after his first phone call, Michael asked if he could visit me. I was nervous about seeing him in person after so many years, but I agreed. He looked different when he knocked on my apartment door. Thinner, more mature, with lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. He was wearing simple clothes, jeans, and a Northwestern sweatshirt that looked like it had seen better days. "Hi, Mom." "Hi, Michael." We hugged awkwardly, like strangers who were trying to remember how to be family. My apartment looked exactly the same as it had when he was growing up. The same second-hand furniture, the same small kitchen, the same worn carpet, but this time, instead of seeming embarrassed by the modest surroundings, Michael looked around with what appeared to be nostalgia. "I remember this place being bigger," he said with a small smile. "It's amazing how much smaller everything looks when you're an adult." We spent the afternoon talking about safe topics: his work, my job, the scholarship program. He asked thoughtful questions about the women I was helping and seemed genuinely impressed by their achievements. "That woman who became a doctor," he said, "the one who wanted to name her daughter Patricia. That must have felt incredible." "It did. You've built something really meaningful, Mom. Something that will last long after we're both gone." That was the idea. As he was getting ready to leave, Michael paused at the door. "Mom, I know I can't undo what I did. I know I can't give you back those years of hurt. But I want you to know that I'm working on becoming the kind of person who deserves your love. You always deserved my love, Michael. That was never the question. No, but I didn't deserve your respect, and I want to earn that back." It was a start. 7 years have passed since that graduation party changed the trajectory of our lives. Michael and I have rebuilt a relationship, but it's different from what we had before. It's more careful, more respectful, and more honest. He's dating someone new, a teacher named Amy who works with special needs children. She's kind and down-to-earth, and when Michael brought her to meet me, she seemed genuinely interested in hearing about my work with the scholarship program. "Michael talks about you all the time," She told me over dinner at that same Italian restaurant where I used to take him for birthdays. He's so proud of what you've accomplished. I'm proud of him too, I said, and I meant it. The man sitting across from me was nothing like the entitled young graduate who had been ashamed of his mother. He had learned humility, empathy, and the value of genuine relationships. The scholarship program has continued to grow. We now support over 100 women each year across multiple universities. The Patricia Coleman Center has become a model for other institutions looking to better serve non-traditional students. I've been invited to speak at conferences and universities around the country, sharing my story and advocating for single parents in higher education. It's surreal sometimes, being introduced as an education advocate and philanthropist, when I still think of myself as the woman who cleans offices and serves tables. But that's the point, isn't it? Those experiences, the night shifts, the tired feet, the worried budgeting, those experiences gave me the perspective that wealthy donors might lack. I understand what it's like to choose between groceries and textbooks, to study while your children sleep, to feel like you don't belong in academic spaces because of your accent or your clothes or your age. Last month, I received an invitation that made me laugh out loud. Northwestern University wanted to give me an honorary doctorate in recognition of my contributions to education and social justice. Dr. Patricia Coleman, I said to my reflection in the bathroom mirror. Who would have thought? The ceremony was beautiful. I wore the same navy dress I had bought for Michael's graduation, now 7 years old but still serviceable. Michael was there, sitting in the audience next to Amy, beaming with pride as I walked across the same stage where he had received his diploma. After the ceremony, as we posed for photos, Michael said something that made everything worthwhile. "Mom, I need to tell you something. That day, at the graduation party, when everyone found out about your scholarship, Madison's father came up to me and said, 'Your mother just showed everyone here what real class looks like.' I was too angry to understand what he meant then, but I get it now." "What do you mean?" "He meant that real class isn't about money or clothes or country club memberships. It's about character. It's about using whatever power you have to lift other people up. You've always had that kind of class, even when I was too stupid to see it." Standing there in my graduation cap and gown, surrounded by the women whose lives had been changed by the scholarship program, I felt something I had never experienced before: complete satisfaction with the choices I had made. I thought about the woman I had been 7 years ago, crying alone in a hotel room after being told I wasn't good enough to celebrate my son's achievements. That woman couldn't have imagined where her pain would lead her. The hurt of Michael's rejection had been transformed into purpose. The money I had saved for his comfort had become a foundation for other women's dreams. The love I had poured into one ungrateful child had multiplied and spread to dozens of grateful daughters. Sometimes the greatest gifts come wrapped in the ugliest packages. Sometimes losing what you thought you wanted most leads you to what you actually needed. Sometimes love means walking away, and sometimes walking away is what finally brings someone home. As I write the final words of this story, I'm sitting in my small apartment, surrounded by letters and photos from scholarship recipients. Sarah Martinez just sent me pictures of her wedding. She married a fellow social worker, and they're planning to adopt children who have aged out of the foster care system. Maria Santos's daughter, Patricia, is now 5 years old, and already talking about going to college like Abuela Patricia did. Michael calls every Sunday now. We have dinner together once a month, and he's teaching Amy how to make my grandmother's famous chocolate chip cookies. They're talking about getting married, and when they do, I know I'll be invited to the wedding. Not as a courtesy or an obligation, but as the honored guest I should have been all along. The Patricia Coleman Scholarship has helped 156 women pursue higher education. 42 have graduated, 15 have gone on to graduate school, and 3 have started their own scholarship programs at other universities. But the number that matters most to me is one. One son who learned that love without respect is worthless, that privilege without gratitude is hollow, and that the measure of a person isn't their bank account or social status, but their willingness to lift others as they climb. I gave Michael everything I had for 24 years. And he threw it away for the approval of people who abandoned him the moment he was no longer useful to them. But in the end, losing his inheritance taught him more about the value of love than receiving it ever could have. And creating the scholarship fund taught me more about my own worth than a lifetime of his achievements ever did. Sometimes the best revenge isn't hurting the person who hurt you. Sometimes the best revenge is using their rejection as fuel to build something beautiful. Something lasting, something that proves their judgment of your worth was never valid in the first place. I am Patricia Coleman. I am a waitress, a cleaner, a single mother, and an honorary doctor. I am a woman who was told she didn't belong, who proved that belonging isn't about permission, it's about purpose. And my purpose has been fulfilled in ways I never could have imagined when I made that phone call 7 years ago, transforming heartbreak into hope, and rejection into the greatest gift I ever gave, not to my son, but to myself. And my purpose has been fulfilled in ways I never could have imagined when I made that phone call 7 years ago, transforming heartbreak into hope, and rejection into the greatest gift I ever gave, not to my son, but to myself.